Oh, hi there, everyone. This is Scott, and welcome to Not Board Games with Scott. No fancy music, no special, no music, no. Okay, all right. There's some music. Anyway, what I want to do is I just had a chance to play a game, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed it enough to break out the camera and say, hey, I want to make a little video and talk about this game and why I liked it. And that game is World of Warcraft, Wrath of the Lich King, Pandemic. What? I'd like to know the story of how this came into existence, because it's very weird to take a pretty old IP and bring it into a board game now. It's unusual. But why I was interested in this at the beginning is this was the World of Warcraft expansion that I played hardcore. This was the one I was raiding in. I was a healer. I was doing high-level content at this point, and then they brought out the next expansion and broke healing, at least the way I like to do it, and I stopped playing WoW seriously. This game really struck me, and I wanted to talk about it, make a little video about why I thought this game was interesting, and it was not for the reasons I expected. So, here is my quick little discussion about the game and why you might find it interesting. So this is going to be a no tripod, just handheld discussion of the key points of this game and why I liked it. So first off, it is based off of the Wrath of the Lich King world. So you've got all the locations, Dalaran and Naxxramas and all the places that if you played the game at that point that were important to you. And then the players, what you play in this game are some of the bigwigs that were in that world. And they all have their own little dolls. So if you like that world, then you would like the dolls that come with it. So you've got dolls for 7 of these players. You've got dolls for these abominations. And then, oh gosh, while this is impressive and cool, sadly, it just sort of marks a part of the board. And then you got the tower in the middle of the board there. So they've done a good job of giving you that feel of World of Warcraft in the world. The game, at its heart, is based on the pandemic system, although it plays very differently than normal pandemic. So in this case, there's only one type of bad guys, so these little things come out all the time, and these are triggering everything that's going on. They're not color related, so instead you have the board with 3 areas, as you can see, and each area has a quest affiliated with it. Now, there's a number of quests, so based on what quests you pick, it'll be a little different each time. And so the quest, the way it works is it's tied to a specific space. So in this case, it's the Nexus over here, which is where I was when I got destroyed and lost the game. But the way the questing works is you occupy that space, you go on a quest, and every time you go on a quest, you're going to have a chance to move your piece along this track. And it's kind of cool. It's like, well, first we had to run and run and run, then fight, then heal, then heal, then heal, etc. And if you get all the way to the end, then you complete that quest. If you complete all 3 quests, then it opens up the quest at the tower. You can then do this and flip over the tower and move the Lich King there. And then you go and have your quest. And that's all the Lich King doll does, is actually he just indicates which piece of the board you have to take extra damage on when you deal with it. That made me grumpy. You don't actually ever fight him. All you do is you move pieces down a track. The Lich King's gives you +1 damage. So there you go. And the picture of him, the Lich King. Anyway, so like Pandemic, you have a number of actions to take on your turn. You get 4 actions in this one. 1 action is to move, like in Pandemic. The next action is to fight. So whether you're going to fight these little guys or you're going to fight these big guys, it works the same way. You're going to roll 2 dice. Now the dice have some fist symbols and shield symbols. So you're going to roll 2 dice. You're going to add up the number of fists. You're going to add up the number of shields and then use it to fight. So if you're fighting things, then little guys, every fist destroys a little guy. If there's any little guys left, then they do damage back to you. Your characters have 8 or 7 points of damage based on the different characters that are out there. So it's very easy to fight. Roll the dice, take 1 little guy off for each fist. If there's any left, they hurt you unless you have shields that you roll, in which case the shields will protect you from some of the damage. The big guys, you have to do 3 points of damage to kill. Now, if there are cards that you can play after you roll that can help you out. So the fight card, for example, gives you an extra fight to help you do better. There's also defend to prevent damage. if there are other players on the space with you, they can play cards to help you. So the game actually likes you to stay together because you can play some of your cards from your hand to help other players if you are together. So there's some benefits to that. There's also characters that, like this person, when someone heals on your space or a connected space, they get an extra point. So the game encourages you to stay together. The problem is I stayed together in this solo game, but then the board got full of these little critters and it ruined everything. You can fight, you can move, you can quest. So when you quest, it works the same way. You roll the dice. Every fist moves you up on the track. You may then play additional cards. Again, the number of cards you can play, it's going to be capped by the number of players that are on that space. So more players that are there, they can contribute more cards, make the quests go faster. You're then going to take that much damage minus the number of shields you rolled. So it works the same way as fighting. If you heal, you roll the dice. For every fist you roll, you heal. And that's it. So those are your choices on your turn. You can move, you can fight, you can quest, you can rest. Cards give you free actions, so they may give you the ability to travel, to heal, things like that. When you defeat a quest, you get an item, which is going to be a one turn use power, something pretty powerful. It works, other than that, it works like Pandemic. So after each player goes, then the bad guys go. And so when the bad guys go, you're then going to draw cards. You're going to add the ghouls on the spaces that are shown. You're then going to, if outbreaks work a little differently than Pandemic, if there's 3 ghouls on a space and you draw on that space again, then it brings on a big guy. And then after you have spawned the ghouls, the big guys all move toward the characters and do 1 point of damage if they land on a character space. If you don't have enough pieces, so like there's only 3 big guys, so therefore once you've had 3 outbreaks, you've got to kill a big guy and get it off the board, because if later on you would get another outbreak, then it just moves down this despair track, and that's a fast way. That's how I lost the game, is I had too many groups of 3 out there. It was spawning too many of these. I didn't have the dolls available for them, so the despair track worked its way down, and I lost the game that way. There are also the the Scourge Rise card. And so with that, that's got the marker, the Scourge marker, which increases the number of these cards that you draw, just like in Pandemic. That also then is how that Lich King moves around the board. You draw a card from the bottom of the deck, put the Lich King in that quadrant. When a Lich King, I guess it would be a trident. Anyway, because there's only 3. The Lich King, where the Lich King is, it makes everything harder there. You take more damage. Everything's tougher to deal with when the Lich King is in your area. But that's all that Lich King doll does. So why did I like this game? Well, I was reminiscing. I mean, that was neat. There's a lot of neat little touches if you were a player. So like the castle sits like this because there was a wall. And then once you've defeated all the quests, then you could actually go and get into here and have your quest. That was cool. The locations were cool. There were some cool little memories triggered by some of the imagery and things like that. But what I realized as I played this game is not that I didn't like it as much because it was a Pandemic, but I liked it because it was a gentle introduction to a fantasy adventure game. And that's what I realized. Oh, this is your first fantasy adventure game, not Pandemic with Warcraft. Because so many fantasy adventure games, there's a lot out there. It's one of my favorite genres, but they're complex. They can be hard to get into. And they've done a really nice job here of the dice doing the same thing for everything. Once you roll the dice, the fists are hits, the shields are blocks, whatever you're doing. And so you don't have to learn a bunch of new systems. Each character does have 1 or 2 special abilities, which is just like Pandemic as well, but it also gets you ready for that kind of concept in a fantasy game. You've got life points that you're tracking, and you have to think about when you're going to heal, but you're not overwhelmed with a lot of choices. You've got the cards, you're dealing with this concept of, I've got resources, when am I going to play them? But in a very easy to grasp package. And I was really impressed with this. This is going to be my introduction to fantasy games. Whether or not someone has seen Pandemic, it doesn't matter. I think this game on its own as an introduction to fantasy adventure games will stand proudly in my collection as taking that role. So that's pretty cool. So if you're looking for a game the gateway game for introducing people to fantasy adventure games, I would take a look at this. If you're wanting to see one more retheme of Pandemic, well, it's a pretty different take. It feels very different than the way you normally run Pandemic. maybe not so much for that purpose, but for intro to fantasy adventure, this hits the mark. So there you go. That's Scott from my basement here in quarantine time, and hopefully you'll find some adventures for yourself to have coming up soon. But make sure and be safe. Take care. Bye-bye.